Roughing into the kicker. Carica sul calciatore. 2.27.3. Kicker e holder. Articolo 3a. Il kicker è un qualsiasi giocatore che effettui un punt, un drop kick oppure un place kick secondo le regole. Resta un kicker sino a quando abbia avuto un tempo ragionevole per guadagnare il proprio equilibrio. B. Un holder è un giocatore che controlla la palla sul terreno o su un kick in tee. Durante un gioco di scrimmage kick rimane un holder sino a che non c'è più alcun giocatore in posizione per eseguire il calcio o, se la palla è stata calciata, sino a che il kicker abbia avuto un tempo ragionevole per riguadagnare il proprio equilibrio. 9.1.16. Roughing o running into kicker o holder. Articolo 16a. Quando è ovvio che verrà fatto uno scrimmage kick, nessun avversario può correre contro, running into, o fare roughing sul kicker o l'holder di un place kick. AR 9.1, 1.16, 1, 3 e 6. 1. Il roughing è un fallo a palla viva che mette in pericolo il kicker o l'holder. Running into the kicker o holder è un fallo a palla viva che avviene quando il kicker o l'holder sono spostati dalla loro posizione rispettivamente di calcio e di holder, ma non sono colpiti con violenza. AR 9, 1, 16, 2. 3. Un contatto accidentale con il kicker o l'holder non è un fallo. 4. La protezione fornita al kicker da questa regola finisce A. Quando egli ha avuto un ragionevole lasso di tempo per ristabilire il suo equilibrio. B. Quando egli porta la palla fuori dalla tackle box prima di calciare. 1. Quando il contatto tra il difensore e il kicker o l'holder è provocato da un blocco di un avversario, legale o illegale, non c'è fallo di running into o di roughing. 2. Un giocatore che entra in contatto con il kicker o l'holder dopo aver toccato il calcio non viene penalizzato per running into o per roughing sul kicker. 3. Quando un giocatore, eccetto quello che blocca uno scrimmage kick, commette un running into o un roughing sul kicker o sull'holder, è fallo. 4. Quando in dubbio se il fallo sia un running into o un roughing, il fallo è un roughing. Mofo 3.3. Falli di contatto. 7. Roughing o running into the kicker. A. Generalmente, un contatto con la gamba calciante del kicker viene considerato running into the kicker, mentre un contatto con la gamba perno del kicker viene considerato roughing the kicker. B. Ogni volta che il kicker o l'holder sono colpiti in modo che il colpo li faccia cadere per terra, deve essere chiamato roughing. C. Anche se lo snap è sbagliato, il calcio può rimanere ancora possibile. Ammettendo che il kicker o l'holder recuperino la palla e si rimettano immediatamente in posizione normale, essi sono ancora sotto protezione, sempre assumendo che la palla poi venga calciata. D. Quando il kicker, prima del calcio, fa un movimento che non fa parte della normale azione di calcio e quindi non è più ovvio che calcerà, probabilmente non sarà più il caso di chiamare fallo, a meno che il difensore non gli vada addosso per punirlo. Notare che i calciatori che effettuano il calcio con lo stile rugby, quello effettuato mentre si sta correndo, sono anch'essi protetti, così come coloro che calciano in modo tradizionale dopo che hanno calciato la palla. Ogni contatto con il kicker, prima che ci sia il calcio, va considerato come un placcaggio sul portatore di palla. Mofo 6.1. Quando in dubbio. 30. Il fallo è roughing piuttosto che running sul kicker.
Before we move to the fouls, we'll start out with a few plays that are legal. And in this one, the contact, whatever contact there is legal because the defensive player who makes the contact with the punter also blocked the kick. So from this angle, it's difficult to say how much contact there really is, but it really doesn't matter because whatever contact there is legal because of the block. The referee also does a good job here of signaling that there is no foul because the block was kicked. So good coverage on this play. Here's another legal play. And the reason here is not because the ball is blocked or the kick is blocked, because he does get the kick off, but simply because when he muffs this kick, it no longer is evident or is plausible or whatever you want to call it that a kick is going to be made. As soon as he takes that step, as soon as he starts running, he may kick the ball, he may also keep running with the ball, and if you look at the defender who actually contacts him, he is not going to block the kick necessarily. He's just as much trying to tackle the runner. So he certainly thinks that at least there's a chance that this is going to be a run and he's going to get a chance to tackle the runner instead of a kick. So I'm not saying just because the ball is muffed that it's never going to be obvious that a kick is made, but here the kicker really gets out of his kicking motion and he turns away from facing the line of scrimmage. So in this case, I do think that this movement is enough that takes him away from the kicking motion, that this contact is illegal. Here's another example of contact that just isn't enough for a flag, and a good no call by the referee. See, there is contact, but it doesn't rise to the level of certainly roughing or even running into, even though there is contact. But we'll get into a couple of running into later in this game here, or later in this training tape. This example just isn't enough for a good for a foul and a good no call by this referee and center judge. So here's the last legal play in this training tape, and now we're getting to the line. Now we're getting very close. I just don't think that this is quite enough for a flag. Yes, there is contact, and the punter is pushed a little bit, but if you look at his upper body, there's no real effect on the contact, and if we call this, then we have a whole lot of other situations we also need to call. So we're getting very close to the line in the sand, but I think this is on one side of the sand, and the next play we'll see is on the other side of the sand. Moving into the running into the kicker, keeping the last play in mind, let's have a look at this contact, and I just think there's a little bit more oomph in this one. So now we're going into situations where there's just too much to ignore. I think if you compare this one to the last one, you see his upper body kind of move down, and he's hit while he's in the air, and he's turned around, and there's just a little bit more here. So the last one was okay. This one is too much to ignore, and this one should be called as a running into the kicker. Here's another example of where contact is it's enough to ignore, but it's not enough for a roughing. So right there, the way that the defender hits the kicker's leg and spins him around is just too much to ignore, and therefore it would be a good call for running into the kicker because it's just not enough for a roughing. We now move into the roughing the kicker category, and we're going to start with a couple of plays where the primary contact, like this, is to the body of the punter, and this is simply too much. Timing of it is good or good in terms of this being a foul. You'll notice the kicking leg hasn't made it back down to the ground, and the contact itself does place the kicker in jeopardy to be injured. So this is a situation where there's just too much forcible contact to the kicker's body, and this is a good call for roughing the kicker. Here's another situation where there's just too much contact to the body. Now, you may argue here that there's also contact to the kicking leg, but if you notice how the punter falls down, he doesn't just spin around because his kicking leg was hit. He's actually hit in the body also, and when there's this much contact, whether the first contact is to the kicking leg or to the body, with this much contact, this is a good call by the referee, and we'll have confirmation of that from the end zone shot. Here's the end zone shot, and it's very close to the same angle as the referee gets, and here we can clearly see what happens to the kicker, and this contact is simply just too much. So you may argue that the first contact right there is primarily to the leg, but when there's this much contact to the entire punter as such, including the body, this is just too much to let go as a running into. So this is a correct call for roughing. In this play, we're moving away from the body, and now the contact is only to the kicking leg, or maybe even only to the kicking foot. But even though we only have contact to the kicking foot, and even though we have a rule of thumb that says if the contact is to the kicking leg, then it's running into, and if it's a planned leg, it's roughing. Here, there's simply, it's only a rule of thumb. Here, there's just too much contact, and this action places the kicker in risk of danger. So this is a roughing the kicker. This should be called as roughing the kicker. The last two examples, we're looking at the plant leg. So the punter's plant leg, like here, when that gets swept away, this will, I hesitate to say always, but I'm very tempted to say this will always be roughing the kicker when the punter's plant leg is swept away like this, because this will always put the kicker in risk of danger. So in this situation, the correct call would be roughing the kicker. In this last play, we see a similar situation where the punter's plant leg is swept away, and it's not as violent as the previous one, but again, if the plant leg is swept like this, in this manner, then it will pretty much always be personal foul, roughing the kicker. So here, that would be the correct call. So we're looking for situations where the kicker, just like here, takes the ball outside the tackle box, and as soon as he does that, he loses his roughing the kicker protection. So right now he's certainly out of the tackle box, and this contact by the defender, even though it's rough, is not illegal, is not a personal foul, roughing the kicker. In this play, as you'll see, the snap is okay, it doesn't go over the head of the kicker, so he takes the ball out of the tackle box on his own free will. So he's not forced out, but he actually decides to run. But that really doesn't matter. As soon as he does that, he loses his roughing the kicker protection. Now all he has is dead ball protection. And clearly the ball is not dead here, so this is another legal play. Here's another example of a punter, a potential punter, who decides on his own to run outside the tackle box. And even though you could argue that it looks like he's going to kick here, really doesn't matter. He's outside the tackle box, and now he doesn't get his protection anymore. So this is a legal play because the hit in itself is legal, and there's no roughing the kicker here. Here's another example where the the potential kicker takes the ball outside the tackle box, losing his protection, making this contact perfectly legal. Even in the tackle box, I'm not sure. This certainly wouldn't have been roughing the kicker, and outside the tackle box, it's absolutely nothing. When the punter runs like this in a crew of 8, he becomes the responsibility of the center judge, who does a good job here of covering him, and the referee turns into a backside cleanup official. But in any case, no foul for roughing the kicker. Here's an example of the typical rugby style kick, where it's completely on purpose that the kicker runs out of the pocket, runs out of the tackle box, and then he kicks on the move rugby style. But again, once he leaves the tackle box, which he certainly is here, then this hit is perfectly legal, and we get another look at it from the sideline to see where the hit really is. From the sideline, we get a very good view of what the hit really looks like, and this certainly would be roughing the kicker had it happened inside the tackle box. This is too much contact, too forcible against the kicker to let go. But since he takes the ball outside the tackle box, now all bets are off, so to speak. So this is just a good defensive play and legal play. Here's the last example of a legal hit on the kicker, and the system is pretty clear. Once he takes the ball outside the tackle box, all bets are off. So even though they hit him very close to when he kicks the ball, and they do get they hit his leg, they hit his body, it is still a legal play because he is out of the tackle box when he kicks the ball. On this final play, we're also obviously looking at the kicker, and he's again going to take the ball outside of the tackle box, but then the return starts, and then he gets hit. So we do have a foul against the kicker here. It is not roughing the kicker because obviously it happens during the return. So this is not a roughing the kicker, but it is a personal foul, either an unnecessary roughness, or it could also be a blindside block. The enforcement would be the same. And speaking of enforcement, if we had a roughing the kicker here, obviously the penalty enforcement would be from the previous spot, and they would keep the ball, whereas now that it happens during the return, it turns into a basic spot enforcement, and B gets to keep the ball. So even though the kicker stays defenseless throughout this play, this would have been a foul had it happened against any other player other than the kicker also. So I guess the bottom line here is, once the kicker takes the ball out of the tackle box, it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to have a personal foul roughing the kicker against him.